Good evening and welcome to the Help to Adjust podcast, where we discuss issues of psychology, equity, and inclusion. There's certain stories that are very special stories that may have different meanings to different people, but are meaningful nonetheless. So today's guest is a brother that has personally helped with the mental health business that we're doing, and gave us a generous gift of a space that he has. Ben Johnson is the owner of Ben's Craft and also the 1120 event space, businessman, consultant extraordinaire. Welcome to the program.
Man. Thank you for having me, Don. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
To be with you, my brother.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. So, you are a native New Yorker.
Indeed.
By way of Harlem.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Harlem, born and raised.
Right. And so you were raised in Harlem, but then you left Harlem early in your life. Talk a little bit about that.
So I think it was probably when I was 12 or 13, I lost my father. I was 12 when I lost my dad in 1989. And my mother, I actually have 7 siblings, so we all grew up in a house together. Yeah. Once my dad passed away in 89, my mother wanted to get back to her roots. She wanted to go back to what she knew in North Carolina, which the only thing I knew about it was visiting there on the summer. So it really wasn't my roots. Mm-hmm. So I kind of never wanted to leave New York. But at the end of the day, North Carolina actually helped me tremendously. It was definitely a blessing in disguise. They say parents know best. And at the time, I thought my mother was losing her mind, but she actually knew what was best for me. So I appreciate that.
It's a very common thing that if you are in New York and your parents think that you need a little calmer environment, that they'll send you down south. Sometimes a girl will get pregnant and she's sent back down south.
Right, absolutely.
Or, my son is getting into too much mess and you need to go down south.
You need to go down south. Yeah. We always looked at North Carolina or the South in general as a fresh start, because we all wanted a fresh start. I had a lot of people that played basketball when I was growing up, and one of the things that they wanted to do was get out of New York because the competition was so fierce in the city. It was like, no, I'm going to go down south and I'm going to play out there and I'm going to excel. But, some did and some didn't.
So you said that you actually started losing friends to violence?
Violence, yes. In elementary school. And so now I have 6 children. I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. And I started losing people at 11, friends at 11 from street violence. So it was, at the time, being a part of it, you don't really think nothing of it. It's just the norm. Like, it's just, this is life. But then as I grown and matured, I realized that was the worst environment that you can put a child in.
Elementary school for you would have been the 80s.
Indeed.
The 80s in Harlem was
it was the crack
tough.
Era, right? Yeah, it was rough. It was a rough place, and I appreciate being in Long Island. So even being in North Carolina, I appreciate it so much. Being in the concrete jungle, it definitely has an effect on you psychologically and emotionally. But most people don't realize that effect until they're a bit older, because I had no idea that some of the trauma and the scars that I had came from the environment.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if you think about people being in the environment, especially being of a tender age and being in an environment where you're losing people to violence, that in itself has to have a major effect on people. There was a time when I was working in a school in East New York, and there was a body outside of the school in the morning, and there was, the police had the scene roped off, and our kids had to come to school and see that somebody had been killed outside of the school.
Wow.
Just to imagine either you're going to become full of anxiety living in that environment, or you're going to become desensitized.
That's a fact. You know what, Don? I have a similar story. I've seen so many dead bodies, but there's one that sticks out in particular. On a block I grew up on, there was a park at the end of the block, right? And so it was just one day. I was happy to be by myself, so I walked down
What
the
block
block.
was it?
140th, 440th,
Oh,
7th and Lennox.
Yeah.
It's pretty popular. Got a bunch of rappers,
Yeah.
bunch of
Oh, yeah.
creatives, and to double back, that block has an old folks home on it currently, right? And so while I was reading James Baldwin's book, I realized he went to school at the old folks home as we know it, right across from my building. So it wasn't until I got older and started reading a little bit more that I realized that this is historic, because James Baldwin went to school there. My parents never told me. Nobody on the block ever told me, but I thought that was important, because that could have definitely helped me to realize that I'm in a special place, and I can do a lot more from where I am.
History makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that there was a couple of dead bodies that I seen, but this one day I happened to walk down the block into the park, and there was someone that got shot, like right in front of me. And so me being new to this environment, I ran around the entire block just looking for somebody to tell. Wow. Just anybody on the street. I was like, hey, somebody got, and you can only imagine the trauma from experiences like that.
You grow up in Harlem, and then you.
But I love Harlem though. I don't want to. I love Harlem to death. Shout out to everybody from Harlem. Harlem, what up? You already know what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about the reality of how tough it can be on the spirit to be in those environments, I think most people instinctively understand that you can both love the place and speak of the reality of how harsh that environment can be.
Absolutely.
In fact, in hip hop, people brag about it.
They do
quite often.
I mean, that's some people claim to fame their blocks that they're from, but that's a different conversation. When we talk about equity, we don't have any equity in any of the blocks, so we shouldn't rep the block to the death. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That is a real conversation. Yeah. And so you ended up going back down south.
Yeah.
And then ended up back in New York.
Ended up back in New York. Shout out to my wife though. Like I said I would never. Speaking of the traumatic childhood experience in New York, I said I would never live in New York again. But it wasn't until I met my wife that I said, you know what, I got to give this another shot. And
yeah. But I mean, you had quite a run in North Carolina because you did some meaningful things. Talk about some of that.
So yeah, when I got to North Carolina, I got into the Christian community, got into ministry. Not right off the bat. I still had a chip on my shoulder coming from New York. Everybody's like, he's from New York. So I already got something to prove, that I'm in a different state. Yeah. I have to let them know how we do it down up there in New York. Like, what's the movie Life?
Right.
Like we got to show them what we do. So that was a challenge initially. But it came a time where I had a son when I was 16, and he kind of was the catalyst of me realizing that, now I have a responsibility. I have a real responsibility. I have another human that I have to be an example for, that I have to take care of, that I have to make sure he doesn't fall into the same pitfalls that I fell in. So that's when I changed my life. I got saved, got into ministry, became a deacon, became an armor bearer, pastor, all of those things. And, it was something that was already in me. And I kind of realized that I had something special spiritually way before I got to North Carolina. Yeah. And I thought it was me, but it was something a little bit deeper, me understanding, my third eye or my inner self or my higher self.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so North Carolina actually cultivated that, and it made me realize that because it's so much slower than New York. So now when I'm in North Carolina, I can't hang out all night. I'm standing on the corner. There's nobody out there.
Right.
So that really made me spend time with myself and think, like, what are you doing? What are you going to do with your life? Yeah.
Talk about that teen father experience a little bit. What was that like?
I mean, that was a rough experience. Early on, I would have to definitely say I did not have any idea of the magnitude of what I had got myself in. I had a father until he passed away. but I didn't know what it was to be a father at 16.
Yeah.
So I was kind of putting the responsibility on my mother, on my son's mom and my son's grandmother, and just trying to still be a kid.
Right.
So it was definitely a life-changing moment. And I did the very best that I could to try to change myself because I had that responsibility. I think I've communicated to my son before he passed, because he did pass away. Rest in peace to AJ. Ajane O'Shea, I love you forever, King. Um, I, I think he knew that I was there for him, and a lot of the changes were because of him, the teen parent.
Yeah, there's nothing like fatherhood
Indeed.
to to make a man of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, the thing is that I cannot imagine what I would have done at 16 if I became a father. I mean, hopefully, it's good to think that any of us would rise to the occasion.
Sure.
But that's a pretty profound story.
Well, I gotta be honest, Don. Like I said, initially I wasn't on board as the father. Like I was like, y'all do whatever y'all need to do, but I'm going to do this. But at a certain point, I started to take responsibility and realize that this is my son. I brought him into the world, and I want him to be a reflection of me. So, like you said, having a son, in this case, it definitely made me a better man.
Yeah. You ended up in ministry, and
Sure.
give me that sequence of events that brought you back.
What, to New York?
Yeah.
Oh, so I was living in Jersey. I had a young lady that we were in a relationship for a while. We had 3 children together, so we were living in North Carolina, and then eventually we ended up moving to New Jersey.
Yeah.
It still was in New York, so I was good, because I never wanted to move back to New York.
You didn't want to come back
I
to
was
New
never
York.
coming back, but once I got to Jersey, and then in 2009, like I said, I lost my firstborn. And we were going to his funeral. We went to his funeral in North Carolina. I did the eulogy, and in my mind, I felt it necessary for me to do the eulogy, because nobody can speak to my heart or speak to my son's existence better than I could. And so at the time, they felt like that was a big deal, but it felt normal to me. It's the right thing to do. This is my son.
Yeah.
I have to, send him off the right way. But
How old was AJ?
he was 16. So he would have been 30. I think now. Where I was actually on the way back from his funeral. This is what got me back to New York. I was on the way back from his funeral, almost in a car accident. My son passed away in a car accident, so I pulled over to assist, to help. I'm in ministry. Like, I felt like I would probably need to pray for somebody. Maybe we could pray somebody back to life. But, that was what my thinking at the time. So I got out to help, and I ended up meeting my now wife of 5 years. We've been together 13 years. So that was one accident that I was happy to be in. And that's what brought me back to New York. She's from Long Island, born and raised in Long Island. And once I met her, I said, yeah, New York, I'm coming back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to live in New York again.
Why do you think you felt like New York was no longer for you in the first place?
Well, because of the way that I've changed, the level of growth that I had, the environment that I was in.
Yeah.
There wasn't enough support, and obviously if I would have done some work to get in contact with certain people, and I did make an attempt to come back before I actually moved back, but I saw the same thing happening in the environment, and there was no elevation, and it's not to knock anybody, but when you come to a place of familiarity and it doesn't look or feel that it's grown any, you're not going to want to be there. And that's kind of what happened with me.
Right. So in a sense, you might say that it was your determination not to stagnate that kind of made you think this is no longer the place for
That's
me.
good. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, that's well said. I definitely agree that I didn't want to be stagnant. Growing up, they used to call me crazy. My friends and relatives and everybody used to call me crazy. They said, "Yo, he's crazy," because I was acting out of emotion because I lost my father in '89 and I didn't have any type of resource. I didn't have any counseling. There was no help to adjust. So I kind of did lose my mind for a while, and I didn't know I didn't have any direction once my dad left, so I didn't know what to do. So yeah, I definitely went crazy for a while. Yeah, now come to think about it, they probably were right.
It's really something because talking about issues of equity and
Sure.
inclusion, what what occurs to me often is that the extreme circumstances that we tend to live in, it would appear that we are a little crazy or doing something so off, but people are adapting to a circumstance that really no one should have to adapt
That's a
to.
fact. That's very true.
So without those things like counseling and mentors and just a safe place to be in these communities, I think it definitely lends itself to kids and others acting out. And when we act out, we don't get a second chance a lot of times.
Absolutely.
We do something, hurt someone else, take something from someone, and end up in prison
Right.
for 3 years or for a long time, and then come out and don't have the opportunities.
But Don, if I can, I want to just touch on that real quick. What I've learned and what I've realized, I still need counseling and therapy. I think that I would probably need that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
To be quite frank with you, especially with all of the experiences that an individual has in their life, I don't think there's ever a time where you could not need counseling to be just.
Well, people that come to us are very successful people. It's not like they are, in and out of jail or shelters or
Sure.
anything. They are people who are that we would look at and say, oh, they're functioning well, they're doing fine. But truly, when people find a way to talk out the things that are happening with them, just life happening to everybody, when
Right.
they're able to talk that out, it is a great thing.
It's necessary.
Yeah, I think that we actually, a lot of people are not hospitalized. A lot of people are not incarcerated, and a lot of people are not losing jobs or acting out because they have this outlet.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I truly believe we
That's
do
a beautiful thing.
a great thing for the community.
You do. I appreciate you, Don. I appreciate the business itself and the gentleman that you are and the mind that you are, especially with the experiences that you've had to be able to continue to love people and support people. That's amazing, bro. It's an amazing thing. It's admirable. I admire you, and I appreciate you being in the space with me.
That's my main man, Ben Johnson.
Salute the dog.
Salute the dog. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
So give me the story of how you got into business, entrepreneurship,
Sure.
and eventually where you are
Sure.
now.
So my first business endeavor was the candy machines, the gumball machines. Yeah. So I was in North Carolina, and I said, you know what? I was like, I don't know. I always had a desire to be in business. Like, I don't know where it came from. It's just a part of my identity. They told me that my grandfather was a hustler. He used to make sure that he provided for the family and so forth. So I'm assuming, I don't know. I don't know enough about my history to know exactly what he did, but they did give me an indication that he was about a go-getter. So when I was in North Carolina, I bought some gumball machines, the 25-cent turn, bought some candy machines and put them in the barbershops, beauty salons. And that was my first business. I never really talk about my first business.
Going around collecting quarters.
Going around and collecting them, yeah.
Right.
That was my first business. So once I did that, I sat down that day when I decided to order those gumball machines. I said, you know what? I can actually earn money independently of an employer. And I realized, yeah, I could do it. And so I went and ordered them, and then it didn't go as well as I thought. This is really slow money if you don't got a ton of them. But the heart and the idea was there. I think Listen, I done had shea butter and oils and all the 116th Street products and did a table. So it's been a bunch of businesses, but more significantly, me deciding to use my my intellect, my charisma, my enthusiasm for business. It caused me to start a consulting company. And I said, I can help an individual give them the motivation they need. One of my taglines is, I create the momentum. Because most people that are in business are looking for some sort of direction in one way or the other. When you go to a business planner, if you need some, you people hire individuals to write a business plan for them because they just don't have direction. So I decided to start a consulting company, which I work with a bunch of different companies in Jersey, in Manhattan. And once I got out here to Long Island, I was already a bona fide businessman. My only thing was introduce me to who I need to speak to, and we're gonna get it done. So that's how I got into business here in Long Island. So you said you wanted the story. My now partner, Lena, Donnie, Nico, shout out to them guys. They're amazing people. They're actually my family at this point. Like we're no longer just business associates. We're family, and that's one of the things that we. One of the ways that Ben's Crab has been so successful. Not to say right now because there's 100,000 seafood boils all over the place, but the initial success came from just creating a family environment and understanding that everybody has a role to play. You know, I came in with a business mind and a direction and a vision. And if you're a great entrepreneur, you can get somebody to fund your vision. And so that's typically kind of what I did.
So you found independent sources of funding, like you,
absolutely,
people who just believed in the vision.
Absolutely, and they had to be sold. Now, I think I told you I had a scholarship that I could have went to any college in the U.S. The only thing I had to do was graduate high school, and I did not do it. But I got my GED.
Any college in the U.S., a full scholarship. That's a great story. So what age did you get this opportunity at?
For the scholarship?
Yeah.
Had to be 13 years old.
Like middle school, you get this opportunity. And what did it mean to you at the time? Like, was there a point that you said, "Oh, I have to do this," or what? What did?
No, it didn't mean anything. I didn't even know what that language meant. I didn't even know what college was.
Right.
It wasn't until the 80s and they started promoting, maybe early 90s, they started promoting the black college apparel. Right? So college was the furthest thing from my mind personally. I can't speak for anybody else, but when they said, you get a scholarship to college, it didn't mean anything. I wanted to go back to the block. I wanted to go hang out. Like, college, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because for some of us,
but kids, go to college, go to school, guys, go to school. Like, I'm not saying go to school.
Right. There's a lot you can do with school that's very meaningful.
Very meaningful.
But there was a time when I had the opportunity. I got out of high school. My father was like, "I can get you a job." He was a supervisor of security at a bank, and he was like, I can get you in there. And it was like, for me, it was reverse peer pressure because the people that were around me were kind of like, are we gonna go to college? Most people didn't know what they wanted to do, and a lot of them finished and some of them didn't, but they were going to college, and I figured, well, let me try my hand because I was a pretty good student. So I went to college, and
nice.
By the time I was 20, I became a teacher assistant, which got me on the path to the helping professions and counseling. But I could understand what you're saying because I didn't really know what it was all about or what the meaning of it for my life was going to be. And why would you be very invested in doing something that you don't really know what it's going to mean for you?
Sure. You know what, Donna? I have to make sure that I give a shout out to all of my brothers from uptown that did go to college, because a lot of them did go to college, and it was, in my mind, I don't know, because they played basketball. I didn't play basketball.
Yeah.
So they had mentors. They had a support system. they had people encouraging them. Listen, you have to. This is the direction. And so once my father died, I no longer had that direction. So there are a bunch of my brothers that went to college. Salute to them. They know who they are. But it wasn't that nobody talked about college. It was just in the space that I was in.
Right.
I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't a musician. So the conversation of college was not really had in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to forgive me for going back to this.
No, you go wherever.
But I mean, I don't want anybody's, personal life, but give me a little bit more about the beginning of Ben's Crab.
Sure.
How did
No.
that story go?
So look, like I said, my Ben's Crab family, they were in a position where business was not going to work. And that's just to be honest. I had my wife decided to take me out to eat for my birthday, and she said, "Hey, there's a place I want to take you to," and it happened to be Ben's Crab, and we went. And I said, I looked around. I said, "This is a nice place. I really like this." I said, "Who runs this place?"
What town?
Oceanside.
It was in Oceanside, right there.
The headquarters. Shout out to the headquarters.
Ah.
3451 Long Beach Road, Oceanside, New York. So I said, this is a great place. Who's in charge? So I went to speak to someone. They say, well, he's not here now. He's out of the country, but he'll call you when he get back. And when I did end up having a conversation with my now partner, he said, we're going to close this business. It's not working. It's not going to work. And I said, why? He said, it's just the business is not good. And I said, and I did say this. I said, it's going to work. And he said, in no disrespect today, he said, why you believe this, Ben? Why you believe this? I said, because I'm Ben and I'm here. And this was an appointed time. And I told you about a quote from Paulo Coelho book, The Alchemist. It says, when you want something, the universe will conspire on your behalf. And so I've been wanting business since I bought the gumball machine. I've always wanted to be in business, own my own business. And it just so happened that all of those experiences prior to me coming to Long Island, they were all conspiring to get me to where I am now, where we are now, which is 4 restaurants, one in Atlanta. We just closed one in Massapequa. So yeah, it's definitely been an inspirational journey. I couldn't make this up, like the whole story. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that the restaurant was named Ben.
It was waiting for me.
Right.
Yeah, it was waiting for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
man.
it was waiting for me. And I took full advantage of the opportunity because I'm a firm believer that when you look destiny in its eye, you could either take advantage of it or you can fold. And I decided that I was going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's a great story. When you believe something and you're able to put some know-how on top of your belief, sky's the limit.
And you have to be ready for the opportunity, Don. I would like to consider myself. I am self-taught. I'm self-taught, and I want to definitely go and get in a space where I could, build on what I know independently and what I've studied and what I've learned. But the reality of the situation is if you have a desire and you have the confidence and you have the heart to believe in yourself, more importantly, I thought that I worked for a startup in Manhattan before I did the deal with Ben's Crab. I worked in a startup and I was giving them amazing ideas. They would meet with me and I was like, yeah, I'm going to get promoted. They're going to promote me today. This is going to be the day. And they end up laying me off. And I realized that, no, they don't want me. They want the ideas.
Right.
And so once I realized that, I had to shift and say, no, it's my vision. I have to focus on my vision.
That's the message. I remember seeing something that I believe you would put on social media.
Sure.
Be the plug.
Become the plug.
Become the plug.
Become the plug.
Yeah.
That's one of my hashtags. Become the plug. Everybody's waiting for an opportunity, and we don't realize how much we have in us individually, and what we can accomplish if we get rid of fear. Fear is the enemy. Fear is such. Yeah. There are things that I want to do right now that I'm a little fearful of, and that's the only thing that's holding me back. But once you get rid of the fear, you can definitely move mountains.
Yeah, it's the right fear, that you have to have, because the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that deals directly with fear and emotion.
Wait, I didn't know we were going to do scientific terms. Okay, I'm teaching you that. Go ahead.
But the amygdala fires off when there's a fear, but not, oh, I just don't think I can do it, but like a fear, am I doing each little step right?
Sure, absolutely.
I have to send this thing off by 3:00. The amygdala is firing off. And so that kind of quote unquote fear is good because it keeps you on your toes. But then when you let the debilitating fear that you will fail become dominant in your brain, I agree with you. That is definitely.
But I do want to shout out this generation, Don, to be quite frank with you, because I see a lot more people are willing to go with what they believe they can do, opposed to them actually being capable of doing it. So shout out to this generation and anybody from the last generation that was able to do it. But I've seen an increase in people willing to take a chance and just be vulnerable and say, you know what, maybe I'm not that great, but I'm still going to do it. So I got to give them a shout out on that.
That's a good shout out. That's a good shout out, because I see young people just going for this.
Going for it. Yeah. Salute to them. Yeah, that's a big deal.
That's a great thing.
That's a big deal.
We talked about on this podcast, we've talked about, in the 80s, our parents were like, you have to be secure. You need to get that city job.
Absolutely.
You need to work there for 30 years and retire.
And that's your dream.
That's your dream,
this.
Right?
Yeah,
right. Because the history of our folks being excluded from unions, being excluded from secure jobs, and then finally getting that opportunity to have the American dream from that perspective really meant that our fathers and grandfathers wanted to make sure that we could have that opportunity. And you can hardly blame them, but now that we are seeing that there's another vision and that we can do our own things, it's important that we promote that. And the kind of knowledge that you have, it's important that people like you can kind of pass that down.
Sure. Yeah. I started to fall into that train of thought, Don, trying to dictate what my children should do, the direction that they should take, but being a human being myself and having an experience. And now I'm thinking, as I'm sitting here, if my father would have been alive, my life would have been completely different. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to express myself creatively the way that I am doing it now, because there was so many constructs that I had to stay within. Yeah. So I try to give my kids the opportunity, and I'm saying I'm falling into that traditional parenting mindset. No, you have to do this, you have to do this, opposed to letting them grow and be free to express themselves, whether creative wise or mentally, whatever way they see fit. It's their life. So I just want them to be happy. So I kind of backed away from that traditional thinking.
That's awesome that you were able to. That speaks to your evolution. Yeah. People, but in some way, I think that it's partially maybe your own ability to feel secure, financially, mentally, from the pitfalls, because people just wanted their kids not to end up in prison. Didn't want them to get fired from a job and lose their apartment. And so, it's like, do something where you definitely will be all right, and it was well intentioned.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree.
It's a lot that has changed, I think, in the thinking of young people, and it's a beautiful thing.
Indeed.
The inspiration, of your story. I mean, are you gonna put it in a book one day, maybe?
Yeah, so I started writing my book maybe 8 years ago, and yes, three chapters, 3 chapters in, 8 years later. So yeah, it's coming. It's coming. You know what? I definitely have the desire. It's a matter of me, sitting down and locking in and setting that goal and finish it and following through. I've just been lazy, to be quite honest. I want my story. I want to tell the story. Listen, it's such a difficult thing for me at this particular point. I just had a brand new baby. She's 21 months, so I'm kind of enjoying that.
Yeah.
And the time that we spend, but definitely, if you help me, yeah, the book will be done as soon as we need it to get done. Yeah.
I also need some help to tell this story, man.
For sure.
The gratitude is there for you coming in, brother.
I appreciate
you. Like, subscribe, share. Help to Adjust podcast. Ben Johnson. If people want to get in touch with you or maybe social media,
Sure.
so forth, just give them
you can
that.
follow us at 1120 Events on Instagram. Follow the Ben's Crab NY on Instagram. You can also come and have an amazing dinner. 3451 Long Beach Road is the address to the restaurant. And 1120 Events is 3001 Access Road, Oceanside, New York. Even though I said I didn't want to move back to New York, everything is in Oceanside, New York. So come on, guys.
The food is good. All right, I'm going to tell you straight up, the food is good.
I paid him, guy. I paid him a little to say that.
All right, appreciate you, Ben.
Appreciate you, my brother.
Peace
Thank
and
you so
love.
much. Much love to you, bro.